Hey guys, what's up? So today I'm going to show you how to arrive to the volume of a pyramid. As you know, a pyramid has a volume that is its base multiplied by a height over 3. But how do we get to this? Like, what's the math behind this? Well, today I'm going to show you. So right before we do start this, let's go over some basic stuff that we have to know. Okay, if we have a number that is going 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, however how many times, right, up until n, the way we can represent that is by doing n times n plus 1 over 2. And how we get to that is if we look at this two-dimensional shape. Okay, so we have 1 here, then 2, and then 3. So 1 plus 2 plus 3, and then 1 plus 2 plus 3. Okay, so since we're going to use two of the same shapes, we're going to divide it by 2, right? So we have this formula divided by 2, and what is the formula? Well, it's n, which is right now it's going to be 3, and n plus 1, which is now going to be 3 plus 1, okay? And by doing that, we can now say that the formula is equal to n times n plus 1, okay? So now we have our formula, n times n plus 1 over 2. Alright? So now, since we have that covered, we also have to know another thing, which is how are we going to represent 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared plus 4 squared up until n squared, okay? The way we would do this is, you're going to have to take my word because I can't really show you it right now because I don't have cubes with me. If I did, I would be able to draw it out and then show you, but right now I don't, so you're just going to have to take my word. But maybe once, if I do make a video about this, I'll put in the link in the description once I have made the video in the future. So if I do, okay? So let's do this right now. The way we would do this is n multiplied by n plus 1 plus n multiplied by n plus 1 over 2 all over 3. Now let's just see if this works because I'm not too sure if I wrote down the correct one. So let's just do something with, let's just use 3. So n squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared is equal to 1 plus 4 plus 9, which is equal to 14, okay? So we'll plug in 3. So we'll do 3, okay, let's just do this. 3 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 4 plus 3 multiplied by 3 plus 1 over 2 over 3, and that's equal to 14. Okay, so this is the formula. So now let's just make this a little bit more like simpler. Let's make it a little bit better looking, okay? And how we're gonna do that is we're just gonna get rid of this 2. So we're gonna multiply both by 2 over 2, okay? And now we're gonna solve it, okay? So let's multiply it by 2 over 2. So this whole part, let's actually just multiply this out too. That would be n squared multiplied by n plus 1, and that would be equal to n3 plus n squared. So n over 3 plus n squared multiplied by 2 plus n multiplied by n plus 1 all over 6. Because 3 multiplied by 2 is 6. So then this is going to now be equal to 2n3 plus 2n squared plus n squared plus n all over 6. So we're going to have to know these two. This isn't that important, but we're really going to have to know this one, okay? So now let's go back to the original question. So what we're going to do is we're going to make really, really small cubes, and we're just going to add them up to get the volume. We're going to make, eventually, infinitely small cubes, infinite cubes, and infinitely small cubes, and that would give us the exact volume. So we're going to make infinitely small cubes and then calculate the volume, alright? So right now we have L multiplied by height multiplied by width, or we can say, let's just make the width equal L, so we can say L squared multiplied by height. Once we do make infinitely small cubes, the bottom will be L divided by N, which is the number of cubes we have at the bottom, multiplied by, first of all, we're gonna have which prism it is. Like, so here this would be 1, this would be 2, and this would be 3. So I guess you can say how many cubes there are, but we'll just call this P number. Okay, we're gonna square that, and we're gonna multiply by height over N as well. Okay, and that means we're gonna, so the height will be divided by the exact same number that is divided by the base. Okay, we need to include length and height because, well, these cubes may, we're gonna make them equal 1. In real life, they can be as small as 0 point something or whatever, 0.0001. But even with that, we still need the length because they still need the volume. So for example, if I change it up, let's say I have this, where this is 4 and that's 4. In reality, it's going to be equal to 4 divided by 3 multiplied by 1 plus 4 divided by 3 multiplied by 2 plus, and so on. And then in the end, it will be multiplied by 4 divided by 3, and then so on and so on. But right now, we're just going to make them equal 3 so that we can deal with an easy number like 1. All right? So we're going to make them into cubes and then push them to the side. Okay? So now this is the formula we have. We have L multiplied by N multiplied by 1 squared multiplied by height over N plus L over N multiplied by 2 squared multiplied by height over N plus L over N multiplied by 3 squared multiplied by height over N. We're gonna keep doing this until it becomes L over N multiplied by N squared multiplied by height over N. Okay, so we're gonna use a little bit of algebra and pull out stuff that repeat. Okay, we see that height over N repeats, so we're gonna pull that out. So now it becomes L over N multiplied by 1 squared, and so on and so on. So we can pull something else out. When we square these, it just becomes L over N squared multiplied by 1 squared, and we're going to keep doing that. So we can pull out L over N. All right. So height over N, well, let's just multiply by height over N. L over N squared multiplied by height over N multiplied by 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared. And now this is where this formula comes in. Okay, so we have these numbers that repeat and they're squared. Well, how can we represent that? So in reality, if we didn't know it, we would just write it like this: limit of N, it would approach infinity. It would approach infinity, and then we would have L squared over N squared multiplied by height squared over N multiplied by 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared up until N squared. Okay, but we need to represent this somehow, or else we would keep doing math forever and we would always get close to the volume, but we would never actually get the volume. So how else can we represent this? Well, we did it right here. So we'll just plug this in over here. So now we have L squared. Let's just make it simple and say N to the power of 3 multiplied by height. I don't know why I have height squared over there, but multiplied by height multiplied by 2n3 n to the power of 3 to n to the power of 2 plus n squared plus n all over 6. Alright, and we're going to be multiplying them, so in the end the denominator would always equal n to the power of 3 multiplied by 6. So it wouldn't matter if we switch them. For example, so if we have b over a multiplied by c over d, we can always switch them, because in the end it would still be a multiplied by d over b multiplied by c. Alright, so let's just keep that in mind. What we're going to do is we see many numbers, we keep seeing n's repeat. So we're going to factor out an n. We're going to divide that by n and factor out an n. So this now becomes L squared multiplied by height multiplied by n to the power of 3 multiplied by n multiplied by 2n to the power of 2n squared plus 2n plus n plus 1 all over 6. We can get rid of the 3 and make this a 2, take that away, and now we're left with L squared multiplied by height multiplied by n squared. Jeez, they really are arguing. Okay, 2n squared plus 2n plus n plus 1, and we're gonna have a 6. So let's just work with this part right here. Okay, first we're gonna switch the denominators, because like we said, it doesn't make a difference. So this will become a 6 and this will become n squared. So now let's try solving it. Okay, so let's push the paper up, and you know what, let's put this in the back side so we have a little bit more room to work with. Okay, so we're gonna work with this right now. So this is what we have. Okay, so we're gonna try factoring it a little bit more. We're gonna make it simpler, simplifying it. So let's only focus on 2n squared plus 2n plus n plus 1 over n squared. Well, we see 2n plus n, this we know becomes 3n. So 2n squared plus 3n plus 1 over n squared. Okay, well, let's see. We can divide them all by n squared because we're adding them. So we can do 2n squared over n squared plus 3n over n squared plus 1 over n squared. These cancel, so we're left with 2 plus 3n over n squared plus 1 over n squared. Or, let's just focus on this part. We have the limit of n as it approaches infinity over 3n plus 1 over n squared. And as you'll see, as n does approach infinity, this whole equation would be equal to 0. And we can prove it with our calculators, or just by thinking, but let's just use a calculator right now. Okay, hopefully you can see. So we have, we're gonna use n is gonna become 10 to the power of, let's say, 30. Can my calculator have? Yeah, I can. Okay, good. So we'll make that equal a. Okay. So now we have 3 multiplied by a plus 1 over a squared. And as you can see, this number is very low because it's 3 multiplied by 10 to the power of negative 30. So if I were to show you what that is equal to, we would do 3 multiplied by 1 divided by 10 to the power of 30. Okay, and this number would be equal to 3 to the power of 10 to the power of 30. Okay, so as you can see, this number is very, very, very small. I'll show you this on the calculator. Actually, we can do 3 to the power of 10. Let's make it a little bit smaller, 6. As you can see, that's 0. It's very low. My calculator is not showing the zeros because I guess there's many zeros, but yeah, it's very low. Okay, so now what we can do is, since we know that this is equal to 0, it's equals to, what this becomes is, now we're left with L squared multiplied by height multiplied by 6 multiplied by 2 plus 0. Well, the 0 doesn't matter, so we're left with L squared multiplied by height multiplied by 2. The 2's cancels and this becomes a 3, so now we're left with L squared multiplied by height divided by 3. In other words, L squared multiplied by height, well, L squared is equal to base. So this becomes base multiplied by height all over 3. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. Hope you can understand my explanation. I don't always explain the best, so hopefully you do understand. Thank you.